Welcome, one and all fans of Brent Weeks and Orbit books and the Night Angel trilogy, plus the novella Perfect Night or Perfect Shadow. Yeah, say confused because one of the Lightbringer books has Blinding Night in it, which I always think is part of the Way of Shadows. But no, the Perfect Shadow is the novella, and Way of Shadows, Shadow's Edge, and Beyond the Shadows are the three books that we are gonna talk about today. So this is basically entitled The One Where We Praise Brent Weeks for Being Such an Amazing God. Uh yeah. Alright, so here we have a small timeline of yeah, Nemesis has been recently. Well, it's gonna come out on the 25th of April, so you have a good month till now and then. Uh, yeah, he's coming out with a new book, the fourth novel of the series, but there's also a little backstory in Perfect Shadow explaining the. Alright, so here's what we know so far. This is the story so far, right? In the blurb of Nemesis, we kind of pick up off where we stopped. That's so we know about the twins. What's the deal with the twins? Here's a picture of what the kids, Logan and Kyler, talk about when Kyler first visits Logan's house. There's a statue of two naked twins fighting with their helmets on, and they're on either side. They're on opposite sides, and they haven't seen each other's faces before this battle. Something, something. So this is basically the story of the Grask twins, and we are told that they are very important for two cycles. uh, Another series by Brent Weeks, Lightbringer, also has an evil twin in the basement, sort of like a Man in the Iron Mask thing going on. So we don't know what the connection is between Lightbringer and the Night Angel, or even if there is a connection at all. I don't think that those two things are supposed to be in the same universe or whatever. But yeah, so here is what happens in the Night Angel series. Book one is divided into, I would say that there's like three thirds, and the first of these thirds, actually, the first transition, the place where it changes from book one to book two, is where Azoth crosses a certain river. We start off in the world of, apparently it's called Midkiru, which I learned this morning. It's not Midkrayu or Midsiru as we used to think. The pronunciation is Midkiru. So does that make the city Canaria or Cenaria? So there's the world map will tell you that there are several places like Ladesh and Alitaria, Sira, the one where the Mongols come from. It's really detailed. It's very nice. The world building is so cool. They get into the architecture of these places and they tell you the names of these people, and you kind of catch on as to which cultures, which real world cultures that they are a hybrid of or represent directly. For example, well, there's a certain race which is gonna make you think of Scottish Highlanders, but also Hindu warriors at the same time. And then you're gonna see interesting things. Yeah, keep it reading. All right, so we start off in the country of Cenaria. Cenaria is bordered by this one on the side, this one on the side, this one on above, and then there's the Screaming Wind, which is an important path between two different things. But just like London or Manhattan or uh, there's a river that goes through the city and it divides the city into two parts, the east and the west. One of these is called the Warrens. So crossing the river from one side to the other marks that's where we see the first change. That's where the first half of the book, the first third of the book becomes the second third. And then from that moment to the Jadwin estate, the book goes by really fast. We so that's the beauty of this book. That's the beauty of this first book of the Night Angel trilogy. I loved it. It's probably my favorite of the three because I like some of the characters that were introduced in the third book and or the second book. I don't know, but he keeps on adding characters, so that's always refreshing. You never know how important the next person's going to be. Like, sometimes the most important people. Oh, all right. So I'm going to cut that out of this. But yeah, this is what's beautiful about the book. The speed of the first book. I'm telling you, the first third, it's like although I say that the book is divided into three parts, these thirds are not all of the same size. In the second third, the years go by so fast, and there's 2 years between every chapter, and every chapter is like 2 or 3 pages long. It goes really fast, and the kids grow up really fast. Logan and Killer, they're only about 2 years apart. So in one of the chapters, he's 14, and then in another chapter, he's suddenly 16. Uh, Everything's so cool. Everything's so cool. And we are given the relative ages of the other characters as well. Then we have the party at the Jadwin estate. This is the best climax of I mean it's just so this is the important part. This is the important part. And all right, so we have Killer, who is a trained kind of person. He's kind of the Nightwing to Dick Grayson. Sorry, he's kind of the Dick Grayson to Batman. There's no Nightwing to Dick Grayson. Yeah, so we got something like a Batman and Robin thing going on. The first book is all about master and student. It's so beautiful, so beautiful. I love it. It's kind of like getting into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles all over again, or and then the second book. What's interesting about the second book is, all right, so the Night Angel thing, it's the appeal of the entire Night Angel thing is that it's all over the place, as in it's we got different people running around the place in different places and doing their thing all at the same time. And there's also underneath you might see the line in purple which goes along. It says Dorian's life. Straight up, Dorian is introduced as one of the most important people. Like the importance of Dorian is stressed, and he's more like a prophet. He's more like Jesus, who he doesn't really partake actively in any of the events, but he's just an observer. And but he's still very, because he gives us hints as to what's going to happen in the future, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. We're going to talk about all the things, all the clues that you need to keep an eye out for when you're reading the Night Angel. Well, I probably have missed a ton of these things, but some of them were revealed before the ending of the third book. But there's still probably stuff that's gonna surprise me later on. I've only read it like 3 times, but let me tell you, I was so hooked on this book that it used to be an excuse. Like, I actually carried the book with me as, like, I wanted to help with filling the gaps when I was riding the bus or something. So it's like whenever I'm riding the bus and I have nothing to do, I'll just read a couple of lines from this book. That was my initial idea when I got this book. But I was so hooked that I ended up riding the bus more than I needed to, just so I could finish the last part of the first book. And then same thing with the second one, same thing with the third one. The second one definitely was interesting, I'm telling you, but what part of it was interesting, it depends. Like I think like different readers, that's like I said, this is kind of like a Final Fantasy sort of thing going on where you don't just have one protagonist, you have several protagonists, and the second and the third book is all about who's going to be king next. There's a power struggle, and during this power struggle, it's like, I mean, I shouldn't even tell that it keeps you on your toes because you don't know. You got you got all the mar you got all the armies marching into one place over these two books, and it seems like, it's so hard to spot, like, no matter how much you think that you're not gonna get surprised in the next few minutes, you are still gonna the surprises are so. Alright, so I know that people like Game of Thrones and stuff. So this is like a little bit of Assassin's Creed when it comes to the action, and the politics is, I mean, I don't know which is better. I'm not like an official book critic or whatever, but damn, I want to see someday. I want to see someday how. So there's this one character called Wanhope, right? And there's a scene where Wanhope, he he races into the sky all naked, and it's so powerful. It's in fact, the picture on the cover of Nemesis kind of reminds me of that scene about Wanhope that I just mentioned. Uh, I love Wanhope. Yeah, that's it's a really cool character right there. And but yeah, so here's the timeline. Here's the timeline. There's a convent. They call it something else. The Chantry. The Chantry is the name for this. It's an all-woman magic school and everything. So yeah. So if I were to explain what this book was about, it's about blade wielders. It's about blade wielders, and one of the coolest quotes from this book is, "There's nothing beautiful in the art of." It's kind of like Wolverine saying, "I'm the best at what I do, and what I do ain't that pretty." It's the same kind of thing in this book. It's very gritty in some places. It's very gritty and dark, and it's like there is literally no hope for some of the characters who grow up in the Warrens. That's stressed so beautifully. And like imagine being somebody from the Warrens, knowing that you don't have a future, and you know you're gonna grow up just to be like all these other people that you see every day, and they're just useless people. And but it's also a book about magic. It's also a book about magic, and there's the fair. Fair is an important character as well. He's represented in the orange line in the last part, but I've used some of the same colors in different sections of the book, which I think is okay because I'm talking about two different books. So if you see the same color in the second book and under the sections of the third book, that's not always the same thing that I'm gonna talk about. Like, that's different things here. I've just used the same color because I like those colors. Like light purple is kind of a cool color. But yeah. So you already hear about some of the characters because, like, if you're not already a fan, you still have a good month to catch up on all of these. But I'm pretty sure everybody who is waiting for the fourth book to come out already knows what's going to happen. And yeah, so the Grass twins, that's that's something that we are already aware of. Then it just doesn't make sense though, does it? Because they're talking about ancient lore or, legend that has happened quite some time ago. But in this screen where we're talking about the Grask twins, there's also a mention of Cycle. The king at that time was Jorsin. Uh, I don't know how to pronounce these names, man. But yeah, the cycle was named after the king at that time, and he made these special things, like armor. And I think the best way to explain those things is like it's like a geocentric solar system. So the solar system had two models back in the day. We didn't realize that everything was orbiting around the sun. So, people thought that everything circled around the Earth. If you take on this model, um, there's two special artifacts, Q-Rock and Iris, which have a story about them. Each one has a story of its own. It's so cool, but they're not Kokari, or at least I don't think that they're Kokari because I think they were built after. That's one, or they were smith after, or uh, it's because it's mentioned by someone who is very thorough with this type. Oh yeah, so inside the story, just like alright, so in the comics, you know how like there's certain news reporters or journalists that follow the main hero. I'm talking about alright, so in Daredevil the movie and in Daredevil the comics, we follow a journalist called Ben Urich, and it's actually Ben Urich who's telling us the story. And in several issues of Superman, also, they kind of use that technique where Clark Kent is talking to us about himself without letting us know that he is himself. Like, we don't know that Clark Kent is Superman, but he is actually, we do know it, but he's talking to the people as if he's not Superman about why Superman is necessary or something. And then there's Lois Lane, who's always talking about Superman, which is also a third perspective, or like it's like, so there's a bunch of people inside this world. It's like a cult or a club who they are following these mystical artifacts. That's one thing. And they also study the people who have carried these artifacts because there's also a scene where Nefdada is he's one of the bad guys. That much we learn early on. There is a other version where he talks about the last known locations of these things, like 300 years ago. This person dropped it into a volcano, and it either emerged as something else or so. See, that's why I think that Q Rock could also be a Kokari that was lost. Like some of the Kakari have been lost, but we don't know if they have changed shape into something. Yeah. So I'm gonna cut that out. I'm not gonna keep that in this video. All right. And then we have the people. All right. So out of the people who have held Kakari, Trace is someone that we run into in the book that is interesting. And that's so we got the Kokaris, we got the people who hold the Kokari. We have some of the characters, and well, especially the twins. The whole idea of twins is pretty big in everything that Brent has touched. Because even in the Lightbringer, you have the current Emperor and the Pretender who is locked away. These two are twins. They pretty much have the same powers or whatever. You got the white prism and then the black prism, or something like that. Two sides of the same coin. Duality is a huge thing in the Night Angel series, and I think the Grask twins. We kind of have some clues as to what the basis of the how they could change. Uh, They probably do get separated pretty early on because they're supposed to fight six battles against each other without realizing they're fighting each other. At least that's what happened to the old Grass twins. I don't know if the new Grass twins are the same ones as the old Grass twins because that would be either some trippy time travel shit or a cyclic event where, like in the Hindu religion, we do have already in the story references to Hindu legend and everything. That's why we have what's his name again? Shiva and Vishnu. Uh, yeah, I'm actually South Asian myself, so I should pronounce them as Shiva and Vishnu and Brahma. Those are the three main deities. When asked who is the father of whom, all right, so it just so turns out that two of the gods came from the other, and then when you ask who is the son and who is the father, the answer is pretty complicated because, in all simplicity, they all come from each other. It's like a cyclic thing. It's like death and rebirth. So one has a cycle, and then when that ends, the other one starts, and then when that ends, the other one starts. So you're always looking at like the beginning of one thing is the end of another, just like, the story, the song one more last beginning is another beginning sound. That's close in time at the bar. Yeah, that's what they say in the song. Now, I think there's also yeah, uh, there's also the mention of Ezra the Mad in this story that Logan relates to. All right, so I'll just read this part out. I should have done this in the beginning of the video, I guess. So I'll just all right, so cut. I'm gonna move this to the beginning. Logan Geyer and Killer are talking about this a couple of statues here, and it reads yeah, I can't read while I'm recording, so I need to stop this damn thing. How do I?